Hello, my name is Trick, and this is your guide to the Manastorm if you want scrolls, golds, loot, gear, goblins, and cool cosmetics. This video will show all aspects of the Manastorm, so navigate to the chapters of the video if you're looking for something specific. So, let's get started. Manastorm, what is it? Manastorm is a new feature in Season 9 on Project Ascension that introduces a gauntlet-like challenge, which is comprised of certain areas in WoW and dungeons, which is modified in various ways, almost like a randomizer, making the length of each map very varied. But all maps having one final boss that needs killing to open a portal to the next map, making it progressively harder and making the mobs and bosses harder and harder, while making the loot greater along the way. After each 5th completed map, a checkpoint or save point is generated, allowing you to start at that level should you die, since dying exits you out. Completing a map has a chance to give you scrolls and boxes with loot and worthwhile gear, plus currencies, while the mobs themselves drop loot based on where they are from. Getting far enough can even grant you mythic and raid gear. It's worth noting that once you enter a new map, all cooldowns reset. So using arcane power, for example, just before jumping into the portal to the next level, makes you still have arcane power and the cooldown has reset. So make good use of this. So, how do you access the Manastorm? Quite simply, first you need to be level 10. Also making Manastorms an excellent way to level up with non-stop action along the way. But exactly how to access it, the easiest way is just by pressing I. It gets you to the join screen where it's possible to queue up solo, duo or as a group. Alternatively, you can visit the Manastorm hub in your capital city. The Horde can be found in the middle of Orgrimmar in front of the bank, while the human Stormwind one can be found just inside the city walls. This also makes Manastorm a great way to teleport to either Stormwind or Orgrimmar by queuing up for the Manastorm and immediately exiting out. This will only grant you a 2-minute cooldown to enter the Manastorm again, thus giving you a portal to your home city every 2 minutes. Quite handy. Manastorms offer a lot of rewards, both in the instance and outside the instance. Starting outside, we have Cogsworth and Millhouse Manastorm, who each have their own currencies which gets auto-collected in the Manastorm upon clearing maps. Starting with Millhouse. Millhouse sells various cool cosmetics, mounts and utility-based spells. Basically, for everything you use outside of the Manastorm. Specifically for the spells, Millhouse sells Levitate, Lockpicking and Safe Fall, just to name a few, and these can be bought as vanity items, making them accessible in all specs and prestiges, making them truly valuable since they'll be a permanent upgrade to your account. Cogsworth, on the other hand, offers buffs and gains that will improve your clearing speed greatly, but they only work in the Manastorm. There's a bunch of good stuff here, not gonna lie. But let's focus on my recommendation for you and what order to get them in, since they're not cheap, but you will eventually get enough points to get everything easily. First up, we've got the Sprint Serum. 50% speed for 15 seconds. What's not to like? You go faster, you get stuff faster. Next up, we got Incantation Intensifier and Rage Rush Solution, respectively being spell power and attack power. It's more damage. After getting speed and damage out of the way, I would choose Long Haul Liquid, which is a straight up HP buff. And fourth, after getting the HP buff, I would choose the Harm Repellent Remedy, which offers resistances to all schools of magic. It's also very much worth mentioning that all of these buffs stack and they last for 2 hours, so pop them all when you go in. And now onwards to the boosters. These boosters last for 15 seconds and do not stack. And there's 4 different types. There's Strength and Agility that each give 8%, or there's Intellect and Spirit which each give 15%. You can only have one of these active at a time, so either Strength or Aggie or Int or Spirit. And last but not least, we got the Motion Lotion. Being as good as it is sexy sounding, the Motion Lotion will make you immune to CC, making it extremely good at the last boss. And if you got like an entire train of mobs training behind you, popping this before going into combat, making you completely CC immune, is really good for bursting down a lot of mobs. Especially with the later Manastorms, when a lot of modifiers that can CC you are present. 2 unique infinite potions are also given upon entry in Manastorm, and will be taken away when you leave the Manastorm. And these are the Endless Manastorm Potion and the Millhouse's Magical Escape. Millhouse's Magical Escape Potion lets you escape any CC, while the Endless Manastorm Potion will recover a large amount of HP, mana, energy, rage, and has a pretty short cooldown and will make you unkillable in the early Manastorm levels. Upon entering the Manastorm, all your buffs have to be reapplied. Don't forget your serums that you just bought. This you only have to do once though. So for my strategy, pace your use of the mobility spells you have to get the maximum speed. Some maps are short, like this first one here, and others are rather long and could take you upwards to a minute or more. Also, if you're pushing map levels, speed might not be the best strategy, as you might get overpowered by the sheer density of the mobs and their modifiers. At higher levels, more modifiers are added on more mobs, and eventually more mobs will have multiple modifiers. The tornado version, which is one of the modifiers of these, can and will pull you towards it, making it a pretty significant death threat in combination with other modifiers, as they might all clump up on you. For the different modifiers, there are some AoE, there is some scatter shots, and straight up just buffs for the minions so that they will run you down, making it much harder to get to the end if you don't clear them along the way. It's worth noting that the vast majority of modifiers only happen when the mobs die, so skipping all mobs and nuking the boss is a very valid strategy. My own farming strategy for level 1 to 50 is pacing my mobility abilities and throwing out the occasional AoE, in this case Divine Storm, to limit the amount of mobs that might gang up on you when reaching the boss, since some bosses possess invulnerability spells, which gives the mobs a chance to catch up to you and just ganking you. If you want to push the maximum Manastorm map level for gear, or farm lower level Manastorms for scrolls and gold, the builds centered around either speed and single target damage, or survivability and damage can make a huge difference in output. More of this in the testing chapter though. The mobs themselves rarely drop anything much of worth, and unless you run with a loot bot and feel like summoning it every map, it's not worth looting anything other than the Greedy Goblins. Simply because the mobs are pulled from the various places in the normal world, so even though they're level 60 in this case, they do not necessarily drop level 60 things, making a lot of the stuff, even green and blues, just useless. But Greedy Goblins, speaking of. These greedy goodies spawn at random instead of other mob spawns upon entering a new map, meaning the same map can have 0 or 10 loot goblins depending on luck. And areas with lots of enemies, like this one in Sul'Gurub for instance, there's a much higher chance for them to spawn since there's just more mobs. Most I've ever seen though is 4, and the chance for them to spawn is the same regardless of the Manastorm level, so this will not change at higher levels. Each goblin drops 3 uncommon, 3 rare, and 3 epic items, and rewards every player with 20 to 25 gold. So you might think, cool, Greedy Goblins, tons of loot, good amount of money. How do I find them, since they are so random? Well, there is some good ways. One of them is a macro that I'm showing you right here, and I will put that in the description below the video. Basically just /macro, put it in there, and then whenever you tap it, you put a mark on a goblin if there is one in the Manastorm you're in. The other is the WeakAura highlight that you're also seeing right now. The link for that is also in the description. This will require you to have enemy nameplates enabled though. To figure out an average worth of running Manastorms, I'll set out to run a fair amount of level 1 to 50s with a various amount of people to check for continuity. I will be recording case of fortunes, amount of Greedy Goblins, gold drops, vendor gold from the Manastorm caches that we get along the way, and the time it will take me in a semi-fast setting. So, let's do some quick testing, shall we?
Ready for action.
So, with the Manastorms run and done, here is the average stats per run after finishing many level 1 to 50s. Some were selling boosts, some were done in groups, some were done in raids, and some were done in solo. But the amount of people and Manastorm level didn't seem to affect anything besides getting better gear from the Manastorm caches that are in different tiers for different type of loot. And of course the time it takes to finish the Manastorms as they get progressively harder. The payout is really good, and considering how fun the content is, it's great for some action in between other activities, and honestly I would highly recommend it. I would give it a perfect millhouse out of Manastorm. When it comes to builds, anything works. I've been running with one with the light as a DPS and it's been great, it was pretty decent, it's a versatile build. But from what I've heard from other players, the top build for solo Manastorms is definitely Astral Storm, since it has insane single target damage so you can just burst bosses down. Also great for boosting. All in all, I would say Manastorms are highly worth it to do, and if you got good enough gear or good enough spec to boost other people through, at the moment, at the time of making this video, the 3rd of March, you can easily sell a 1 to 50 for around 300 to 450 gold, making the value greatly increase. I hope this guide will be of some use to you and make you able to channel your inner Millhouse Manastorm. If you have some tips or some corrections to my guide, feel free to let me know in the comments below so we can all share in the data. Else, if you want me to make more guides and Project Ascension content, let me know in the comment as well. Trick out.